Hello, this is Omar Brownson, co-founder and CEO of gthx. I'm delighted to be with you this week as we practice gratitude together. I have to admit it's one of my favorite moments of the week is getting to share the practice of gratitude in community. Gratitude makes visible what we value and reminds us that what we take for granted, we make invisible. And so each time we give thanks, we're being given the opportunity to see good in the world and the good in ourselves. Today's topic is around living in uncertainty. And we have one of the most amazing people guiding us through today's practice. Alex Dorsey is a dear friend. She has been my executive coach. She has been a facilitator and trainer for organizations that I have led, in communities that I have been a participant in. She was trained by the Center for Courage and Renewal with the great author Parker Palmer, who speaks to hidden wholeness. And I think if there are three traits that I would love to share about Alex, is her ability to listen, her ability to ask questions, and her ability to facilitate conversations. And the word facilitate is to make easier. And so today we are being given the opportunity to make easier how we live in this moment of uncertainty, how we can take care of ourselves so that we can sort of move in the world in the way that we want to. Again, this practice is for you. And so I invite you to participate in the way that is comfortable for you. So whether that's closing your eyes, taking notes, or sharing in the comments. I do have one ask, is that if a word or phrase from today resonates, meaning you feel it in your heart as a truth, I would like you to share it either at the end or if you want to just capture the moment in the comments. When we share what resonates with us individually, without comment or interpretation, without judgment, we are giving ourselves the opportunity to move from the story of self to the story of us. And that's what I love about gratitude. It's the social emotion that reminds us that we're not alone when we practice gratitude. It's at that intersection of our self-care and our relationships, and that we are never apart when we can actually do this together. So with that, I'm delighted to introduce Alex.
Thank you, Omar. That was such a kind and generous invitation. I want to begin just by acknowledging the space you've created. So you'll see me look slightly to my right if you're seeing me on the screen right now, because that's where the images are. Let me see if I can move them up just a bit. Okay, so I can be as present as I can with you. This space you've created, Omar, reminds me of a quote by Howard Thurman. There's an expert of this quote that says, listening to the sound of the genuine in ourselves. And just being here with you, even on arriving, working through the technical things, I can feel that intentionality that you're holding so that those that enter this space with us to engage in this conversation get to be present to the genuine within themselves. The conversation, as Omar mentioned, is on uncertainty. Never before have I seen so many headlines, however the headlines come through the news, through the podcasts, through articles around uncertainty. and I do quite a bit of coaching. And the conversations all seem to hinge on how do I lead from uncertainty? Who am I in the midst of this uncertainty? How do I navigate it? And so when Omar invited me to just have this conversation with him, and by extension with all of you, I thought it's an idea that's up in the universe, so let's just dive in together. And that's what I invite you to do. As Omar said, pay attention to what resonates. I love that you're into etymology, Omar. I think in your last session, you talked about the importance of naming and the root of where that comes from. If you haven't listened to that, Name the Pebble, check that out. It beautifully describes the importance of naming. I believe in etymology as well, so I will raise up names and certain definitions. And I invite you to be present to a distinction. There's the defining that happens in the collective consciousness in the world, often through Miriam's. And then there's the definition that's born of your experience, that if you live into it, it enhances and grounds your authority. So I just ask you to be present to both. At different times, I may speak to each, a way that I uniquely define something, or a common definition. Naming and certainly understanding the meaning behind the words that we use has incredible power. So, what is centering? I'm going to begin with that, because the place I'm going to speak from is about centering in the midst of this uncertainty. So we'll start there. And centering for me is a process of returning to a peace within. It's returning to a calm, a sense of groundedness from which you were able to observe life, your inner life and your outer life. It's a space where you're able to notice more keenly. You're less attached to your ego. You're less attached to someone else's ideas of who you are, or what you should be doing, or shouldn't be doing. It's a place of remembering, embracing wholeness, that inherent wholeness that we all come into the world with, that just by the nature of the society that we live in, we're usually distracted from, and sometimes strategically distracted from, so that we spend money on things we may or may not need, so that we feel a certain way about ourselves. Centering lets us let go of all of that. And the feeling tone for centering often falls between the head and the torso. It's an embodied experience. You may be aware at moments in your life where you get lost in something. Maybe it's a good movie, or it's a situation, and you are outside of the core of your being, focused on something else, worried, maybe trying to control it. We often lose our center because we're in the future, hoping, strategizing, figuring, worrying about something that hasn't yet occurred. Or we're in our past, a place that's about regrets or longings for what was. So I invite you right now just to take a moment and think about where you spend most of your energy? Just take a moment. Do you spend it in the future? Do you spend it in the past? Or do you spend it in the present? And once you have your answer, I'd like you to type it in the chat. Right. We've got past, present, future, future, present, past. Right. A lot in the future, but few in the present, and some in the past. Okay. Thank you. One of the important elements of centering is recognizing that we have different relationships to it, often in context of certain situations or specifically with different people. So circumstances can inform where you go. Situations can drive where you are. With a consciousness around centering, it's about being in your authority so that you are present as consistently as possible in the moment, right? So if we're centering amidst uncertainty, we're able to hold that core presence amidst the unknown, the unreliable, the unforeseen. Often uncertainty is identified as a place of instability. You can't trust it, not knowing. And as human beings, we want certainty. We want something we can just grab onto and count on. We want a person that we can trust. We can anticipate what they're going to do. We want circumstances we can predict are going to turn out a certain way. And in our humanity, some of us deal with more uncertainty than others in the day-to-dayness of our living. It's easy to forget that in our world, but the news certainly brings it in. The uncertainty depending on where you live, your net worth, your gender, the amount of pigment in your skin. It all informs the uncertainty sometimes that you experience out in the world. Being mindful that others may not have the level of comfort that we have, whatever that is, or privilege, is one way of bringing ourselves conscious to our core. It drops us into this space that Dr. King spoke of beautifully when he said we are tied in an inescapable network of mutuality, a single garment of destiny. And centering allows you to be present to that experience that is beyond any smallness in your world. And it opens you up to see with compassion and humility a broader world. And that's why it's important. So the 4 areas that I'm going to speak to briefly today are 4 areas of practice. And the first is in locating yourself. And we've talked a little bit about that. Identifying in a moment, where are you? And being able to bring yourself back, call yourself back faster and faster, so that you're not spending your most valuable currency in life in situations or in circumstances that are designed without your wholeness in mind. The second practice that we're going to look at is on recognizing a greater invitation before you. Life for many folks can seem limited, especially when you've been in your home for months, your usual patterns are maybe interrupted. There are some people that live alone, or you're trying to work from home and homeschool your children, and maybe an aging parent who's moved in. We have different dynamics. And whatever situation we find ourselves in life, there is a greater invitation that's waiting. And it's a practice that allows you to step into that invitation. The third is on letting go of inner barriers. And those are just barriers to your seeing. Maybe it's an opportunity, barriers to your hearing, what you're meant to do that's in service of the world, barriers to you accepting yourself more fully. And the last is setting and living intention. 4 practices. A place of locating yourself, first and foremost, being present to a greater invitation, a letting go, and a living into intention. Those 4. And we could spend a lot of time on any one, but the 4 together progressively supports a groundedness and a stability that I have found in my personal life, supports me in some of the most traumatic and devastating circumstances. So I just invite you to be present to which of these practices speaks to you, which one you'd like to delve into more deeply in your personal reflection and contemplation, and which ones also are already alive for you. Just noticing. It's one thing to be present to leaning into more of what we don't have or we'd like more of. It is equally important to raise up and reflect back to ourselves those practices and things that we're already doing that are life-giving and sustaining, like tapping into a gthx moment for greater practice, right? So I'm going to ask you to settle in wherever you are. Take a few deep breaths. And I'm going to invite you to close your eyes, if you're comfortable closing your eyes. This session will be recorded. If you want to watch it again, eyes open, feel free to do so. This is only an invitation. But by closing your eyes, you're dropping deeper into the awareness, your awareness in an embodied state. That's just something I invite you to try out. Each of these 4 practices hold a common foundation. And that foundation is in the heart of a question. A question that moves you up beyond what you can see, know, and understand. A question that interrupts the monkey mind and focuses your thinking. Research has shown the power of questions in orienting us, moving us in directions that we want to explore, and at the same time, attracting to us the answers from places and sources we would not imagine. So I invite you to be present to the questions that you hear. And I also invite you to be present to the questions that might arise for you. A good question can also be the seed for another question that deepens your exploration of yourself, widens your field of vision. So who are you now? From the beginning of time, that is one of the most important questions humanity has addressed. And I invite you to be present to the now. Who are you now? How are you showing up in the whole of your life? How is what you desire to experience in your reality made manifest because of your beliefs, your stories about yourself? And where are you experiencing barriers to the fullness of life that you desire? When you can identify who you are and where you are in each moment, you have the power then to choose how you decide this next moment of life unfolds in your being. You may not be able to control what it looks like externally. Sitting with the question, who am I now? And who am I choosing to be today? Orients you and calls you back to the deepest part of yourself, beyond transactions of giving to get, beyond wanting to please, beyond worries and fears about what you can't control. Notice in your body where you feel any type of energy or resonance. When I ask the question, where are you in your center? Is that center down in your belly? Is it up in your heart? Is it in your throat? Is it in your head? Notice, asking the question, who am I now? Who am I choosing to be? Where am I in my center? And holding it with several deep breaths helps to drop you into the heart of your being. It's a way of calling your essence back into your awareness. The second practice, identifying a greater invitation. This practice, when rooted from your center, is rooted in one question that many individuals have found opens possibilities of transformation and experiencing life in ways beyond the limits of their thinking. And that question is, how can I serve? How can I serve? Again, grounded from your center, asking that question without attachment. In a space that is open to all possibilities, invites answers that you couldn't begin to imagine. How might I serve may invite you to be present to a friend you haven't talked to in many years that needs the comfort and support of a listening ear. How might I serve might open the floodgates for ideas of ways to address strategies in your workplace. Create some type of remote culture that is rich in noticing the human aspects of each member of the workforce. It brings a value of appreciation, recognition, possibly before where there was driving and striving. How might I serve? May call you to sit with yourself and the pain and the grief that you've been noticing around you, weighing upon you, and release through your tears, through your journaling. We are all connected. And so the space behind the question of how can I serve is an invitation to the greater invitation of all of life. How often do you begin your day with a moment of stillness that recognizes your connection to all of life through a spirit of service? The third practice, letting go of inner barriers, begins with growing recognition of who you are and what are your barriers to being the fullest expression of what is uniquely you. For some people, it is fears of what other people are thinking. It's an inherent sense of not good enough. Maybe it's a story of how you've been wrong. Whatever are those barriers, they will tend to show up again and again unless you have an intentional practice that releases them. A question as simple as, show me what I need to let go of today to be fully alive. Allows the answers to come in ways that you might not imagine. Just take a quick moment to think about something you may be holding on to. And you know it's time to let it go. And the fourth and final practice setting and living into intention. Oftentimes, people exchange the idea of intention with goal, something they're going to pursue. I want to make that distinction with recognizing intention as a purpose that informs the direction of your life, the direction of your actions, and the distinction between the two. One is about achievement, another is about attraction. Achievement, attraction. Setting an intention can be supported with the simple question of, what is the highest intention I can hold for my life today? What is the highest intention I can hold for my life today? Each of these questions, when followed by a few moments of journaling, that place where your head, your heart, your mind captures insights on a page, reveal information that gives you direction for the moment, direction to where you spend your focus and your attention, and direction for your growth. I'm going to invite you to just take a few deep breaths. And if you've had your eyes closed, I invite you to open them. And I want to leave you today with a brief blessing. A blessing that holds my thanks for your awareness for the gift of this time. It's a blessing of the Boats by Lucille Clifton, one of my favorite poets. May the tide that is entering even now, the lip of our understanding, carry you out beyond the face of fear. May you kiss the wind and then turn from it, certain that it will love your back. May you open your eyes to water, water waving forever, and may you, in your innocence, sail through this to that with greater certainty and centeredness amidst any uncertainty in your life.
Thank you so much, Alex. That was beautiful. I know that these practices are not easy, and so I just want to acknowledge the challenge of sometimes centering in the midst of uncertainty. I invite folks to share a word or a phrase from today that resonated with you in the chat. This is a moment where we turn our sort of individual experiences into a shared one. I know for me, I'll just start reading a few as folks collect their thoughts. Born of your experience, in your authority, centering, not knowing, privilege. Greater invitation before you, mutuality. Single garment of destiny, achievement, and attraction. As I'm reading some now, centering to present, what I'm holding on to that I know it's time to let go of today, blessing now. What else is possible? Gratitude as a practice is really about how we show up every day. It's not a magic elixir that you take it once and then it sort of solves everything moving forward. It's how we find those one anchors that allow us to each day come back to, whether it's a question, as Alex invites us today to think about, what is that one question that we can ask ourselves? Who am I today? Who am I today? Who am I today? Folks are sharing, why not me? Letting go. What is the highest intention I can hold in my life today? I want to thank everyone for participating today as we practice gratitude together, and that is truly, it's together. That's what I love about this space in particular. I have one additional request today, in addition to the sharing of resonance, is that we have a short survey at the end. As part of COVID-19, we decided to create these weekly Zoom Thankful Thursday practices. So this was truly born of our experience, to use Alex's words. And so we want to really make sure that it's of service to you. So it is really helpful as you sign off today to complete the survey. Again, thank you for making good visible. Thank you for practicing with us today. Thank yourself for giving yourself this time to be with us. And we look forward to seeing you next week. We have a special guest, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, very excited. And again, thank you so much, Alex, for guiding us today, for your questions, for your centering, and for your heart. I'm looking this way because that's where you are on my screen. And again, thank you everyone for joining us. Take care.